Montaigne's Tower. Just trying to read. I'm still awake. Can't shake the day. So I'm reading. When I was 15, I moved into Montaigne's Tower. I didn't stay in it for more than a few minutes or hours at a time, but I knew it was there and available. Michel de Montaigne built it in the 1570s on the grounds of his country manor house because he wanted a place to think. When he wasn't in Parliament or on the road through war-torn France, he took refuge in his book-lined sanctuary and composed the essays we read in classe de seconde at the Lycée. I could picture it as clearly as if I were entering it myself, climbing the curving stone stairs to the upper story, pushing open the solid wooden door and closing it behind me. It was always morning there, with bands of sun on the floor reflecting on leather-bound volumes and quotations carved on the beams. Like Montaigne, I walked back and forth in a leisurely, possessive way, knowing without counting them the 16 paces of the room's diameter. Like him, for a time, I let the world outside take care of its own without humiliating myself. Were largely behind me. The Lycée Français in New York, just off Fifth Avenue, was housed in an elegant mansion built in the style of 18th century France. It was both ornate and light. Under tapestry-covered walls, a creamy marble staircase curved up to patterned marble floors. And for school assemblies, we entered a ballroom of gilt and mirrors. I must have known that Papa had badgered the school's directors into admitting me for free. But the thought did not burden me. During those war years, when my schoolmates included European royalty landing penniless on our shores, available money was no gauge of status. Furthermore, I was making good grades now, especially in literature and math, and this was as gratifying to the directors of the Lycée as it was to me. As an American, some years the only one in my class, I served as living proof of the redeeming power of French culture and the rightness of its mission civilistres. Madame David was our teacher of French literature in the highest classes. Small and hunched over in an eternal-looking pastel silk, she was so imperturbably self-contained as to be almost expressionless. Our rambunctious class hushed in her presence. From my front row desk, I watched her face, pale as paper, under her dyed pink hair, and hung on her every word. When she talked about Montaigne, I didn't listen just so I could feed her ideas back to her in my assignments, though by now I had learned well how to do that. She was suggesting a more challenging use of my wits as she told us how Montaigne shrugged off the opinions of others. He turned to his own experience to find out what was true for him. That's why he invented essays, which he called the art of being truthful. Finding out what he thought let him find out who he was, says Madame David. Self-portrayal forms a person, delineates his inner self, reveals le moi profond. Le moi profond. I immediately felt my own desire for precisely that, to find out what I really thought, to know my moi profond. That is why Montaigne needs his tower, and why I needed it too. Attention to his own immediate experience, Montaigne explained, preserved him from the flaming hatreds of his time. Quand je danse, quand je dors. When I dance, when I sleep, I sleep. All of nature is present in the simplest of acts, he said. And as we allow ourselves to focus on them without distraction, these actions become calming and even voluptuous. Voluptuous. Pleasure arises and understanding. That's how he kept a sense of equilibrium. I wanted that. My own life felt squeezed ever more tightly between conflicting forces. I had not succeeded in accomplishing the divorce of my parents, the goal I had set myself at 9. I no longer imagined that I could. Despite occasional good moments with Papa, the dread of him was strong in me, compounded now by a sense of failure and the different kind of vulnerability I felt as I moved toward womanhood. I craved his attention and feared it even more. The Second World War had resonated in our lives. New schoolmates included boys and girls from Poland, Belgium, and Holland. By the end of my second year, they were coming from France itself as the unthinkable happened. Paris, which the Lycee had caused me to love as if it were my own city, fell to the Third Reich. In flickering newsreels, I saw Nazi troops goose-stepping down the Champs-Élysées and wept. I struggled to understand that terrible things can happen on a huge scale, that inhumanity can triumph, that whole countries with their exquisite civilizations can go under. I prayed for America to enter the war. Naturally, I saw it in all in black and white, marvelously heroic figures to me. The young men in uniform who came across my New York horizon, Free French and Royal Air Force soldiers in transit to the war zones, moved me thrillingly. Because Mama volunteered at the ANZAC, Australia-New Zealand Air Corps Club, and often took me with her to help serve tea, I came to know many young men from down under who were on their way to fly for the RAF. With their entrancing accents and gray-blue uniforms, they were very glamorous to me. All except Ron Bellingham, a shy, homesick little guy who'd been raised by his great-aunt in Sydney. He seemed almost as young as I. Those weeks he spent in Manhattan when I was 14. That's why he wrote to me, I guess. Long letters from his base in England with photographs of his bomber crew standing proud and awkward under the belly of their plane. Blonde little Ron, looking like a choir boy, served as forward bombardier. It was summertime on the farm, and I was on Spotty, leaning down from the saddle to take the mail from the box by the road. The letter from one of his barracks mates informed me that Ron and his crew had gone down in flames over Germany. I looked around at the maple, the house, the barn. Spotty shook the reins free and began to munch the grass as I read the letter again. I sat there a long time, my eyes on the far horizon, trying to imagine that Ron's death had some meaning. Though I sensed the terrible cost of the war, I was marvelously stirred by it too, especially after Pearl Harbor, when my own country engaged full tilt and I could feel part of a huge and necessary collective effort. I felt it in the Albion summers when shortage of labor made me useful as a fruit and vegetable picker on nearby farms. Rising at dawn to be ready for the truck, I worked 10 hours a day along those, or feeling the canvas sling on my waist grow heavy with cherries. I felt as full and simple a satisfaction as I went dark. Switching off the lamps, we pulled back the mandatory black curtains and opened the windows wide to starlight and the foot sailors on their darkened ships, with Dutch families in the occupied lowlands, with the hunted French resistance fighters huddling over their shortwave radios, that we seemed to be breathing together in the one vast night. Papa had a shortwave radio set of his own, and because he loved the German language, he regularly tuned to broadcasts from Berlin. Each night, these broadcasts prepared for the German people in the Third Reich and those scattered in other lands included a reading of the names of sons and brothers and fathers who had fallen in battle. There was a growing poignant Germany. And each slowly enunciated litany of names was preceded by a song, the same beautiful, somber song. I knew it by heart. To slow, muffled drumbeat, the great tenor Richard Tauber sang, Ich hatte einen Kameraden. I had a comrade, a faithful comrade, standing by my side. I turned and saw he had fallen by my side. Mama said, please turn the volume lower. Neighbors are rumoring we are German sympathizers. Yet I felt strangely comforted and even proud that Papa brought these voices into it. And whatever time of whatever day it is that you see this, if you do. Blessings. Thanks for joining me.